Welcome to another Grow to Cycle tutorial video. I'm really excited today to talk about the spring season, which is upon us here in New Zealand, and the best season of the year to really get your garden cranking and grow. We can grow all sorts of exciting and beautiful veg in this, and it just goes so fast this season. So I'm going to tell you in this video what to plant during spring, how to start it growing, and how to plan to have all the food that you need to keep you going throughout the season. So as you eat one lettuce, that you have another lettuce growing that'll be ready in the next day. But to make this video even more exciting, I'm also going to cover the top 10 veggies that I would grow in my garden if it was me starting a garden now. So I'm going to take you through a whole lot of tips and tricks to make your garden really go well this spring. There's really 4 different categories of plants which I would say that you need to really emphasize when you are planting out your garden in the spring. Now there's a couple of other categories such as your trees, so things like your fruit trees. Obviously you don't plant them every spring, but you leave them for several years to mature before you get any fruit. And then you got things like perennial plants. I love perennials. They're amazing things. And they are great because once you've got them established, they will last for several years, and you can harvest from them many years. So things like rhubarb are a good example of a perennial plant. Fennel can also potentially be considered a perennial plant. So yeah, things like this are great in your garden as well. But for this particular video, we're looking at things which you need to emphasize every single season. So for example, direct sow, things like lettuce, transplant short terms. Most things are better done direct sow, but you can do things like potentially you can do beetroot, or you can do things like basil and stuff as transplants. And then you've got your direct sows for the long term, things like potatoes, and things. Oftentimes these are the kind of seeds which are sprouted, or they're more like bulbs which have sprouted. So your onions, your potatoes, things like this. Potentially beans as well, because they're quite a large seed. And then you got your transplant, and that should be a long-term transplant. So things like your tomatoes, or things like this, corn potentially, which have a very long time to maturity. But anyway, on to the direct sow short term, which really is probably the most important one for planting. How do you plant them? How do you get them to grow? Well, they're actually pretty straightforward, really. You just need a small section of soil, relatively small, especially for lettuce, and all you want to do is you want to fluff up that soil, add 1 to 2 centimeters of compost, and if they're small seeds like lettuce, my suggestion is just sprinkle them over the surface. Don't worry about making holes or anything. Just scatter them over the surface, and then cover the seeds with a very fine potting mix, maybe less than 1 centimeter, maybe half a centimeter over that, and then water them in. For larger seeds, you want to dig a trench, as for carrots, or make a hole with like a chopstick or the back end of a pen, and you can put your seeds directly into that and then cover them up. But for direct sow short term, planting is absolutely essential, right? You have to make sure that you don't plant your whole garden out in one go. Right? Because you'll run out of food after 2 weeks. So what you want to do is set 1 day a week. Let's say Sundays is your planting day, right? The day that you have a bit of extra time, maybe half an hour or an hour. That's all it takes. And then if you want to grow, let's say 30 beetroot, let's say 30 beetroot seeds. It's ridiculous to plant them all on the same day. Instead, what you should do is plant 5 or 6 on your first planting day. And then the next Sunday, you can plant the next 5 or the next 6. Remember that your garden space is limited, so really try not to plant your whole garden out in one go. Otherwise, you'll have some waste. Right? So, my selection, because I said it's going to be my top 10 veggies for spring. And obviously, starting off with number 1 is a lettuce. Beautiful in a salad. Who will say no to having fresh, homegrown lettuce? beetroot. Now these grow really fast, they're really hardy, and they are so nice in a salad. If you grate these up, you can even have them raw. Beautiful. Coriander. This stuff you can just sprinkle over a patch of ground and it will just take off. And it's a wonderful fresh herb. And then wild arugula. This is one of my favorite leafy greens. It's just so spicy and tasty. Now, because I could only choose 10, I was limited to these 4. But I really wanted to include silver beet and spinach and even radish, because I personally love radishes. Right? All these things are really great additions to any garden. I mean, actually, Direct-Sow veggies really should be 50 to 75% of your garden, because you can just grow so much with relatively little effort, right, and in a very short amount of time. But the reason why these are I say these are direct sows is if you do, for example, beetroot in a transplant, it oftentimes will not grow as well. At growing these things directly will give you much better results. They will grow much larger, and they'll grow much more readily, because if you transplant something, you're going to be damaging the roots, and if you damage the roots sufficiently, it will not grow. And even things like silver beet are very well known to grow a lot better if you just sow the seed directly into your garden. Now, it is a little bit more effort. You have to be very careful to make sure they are well watered. So really, you want to grow these kind of things in a season, in a week when you know there's going to be a lot of rain. So for transplants, for short-term transplants, my selection would be basil, celery, and extras are bok choy and mustard greens. Now, I say celery is short-term, but really it could potentially be a long-term plant. And I know that this seems like quite a short list. Well, there's many plants which people would categorize as transplants, but really I'm keeping them as direct sows. Now, I suggest if you want to do transplants, maybe get like one of those egg cartons, the ones with the 30 eggs, and then you can just have a tray of 30 seeds to go at one time. And then to plant in succession, you want to pour about 50 to 75% of compost into your egg tray, and then top it up with fine potting mix, and then use a chopstick to just dip a little hole in the middle of each and every one of the cells. But then you only want to fill about 5 to 6 of the cells every week. And as I said, every Sunday's planting day, put another 5 in every Sunday. And then once you've put the seed in, you put your 5 seeds in on the Sunday, then you cover those holes. And you know which ones have been filled because they're the ones which have been covered. So then you have the rest of the tray which has already been dipped and freshly got all the holes in it. All you need to do the next Sunday is put the seed in. Makes it very convenient. So, that we've already gone through direct sow short term and transplant short term. We've only got 2 more categories left. I'm not going to tell you how to grow these ones because these are a bit more tricky and really there's not enough time in this video. But my selection for long-term sowing would be beans. Now, beans and peas are my absolute all-time favorite vegetable. Definitely got to do beans. Carrots. Carrots are another great veggie in the garden. So sweet and fresh when you grow them yourself. They can be a bit hard to get to grow big, but as long as you grow enough of them and you thin them out as you grow, you'll have something really tasty to eat anyway. And parsley, which is very much a long-term plant. Such a valuable crop. You got to have this in your garden, parsley. Others extras are potatoes, shallots, fennel, and sunflower. All of these are really great additions. I just really ran out of space in this list, in my top 10. And obviously I need to have a space for my long-term transplants, so there's that. Now, if you want to grow beans, make sure that you have a trellis up before you plant. Don't try to put it up afterwards, right? Because you'll probably be like me and it'll never get done and your beans will just collapse and die. Just please don't even grow beans unless you have a trellis in place or some kind of fence or something that you know they can grow up. So, finally, the long-term transplants. And my suggestion, drum roll, is tomatoes, and that should be number 10. And tomatoes are a wonderful, wonderful plant, but they take a long time to grow. So if you grow these now in containers, hopefully by early summer you'll have them to a large enough state where by the end of December you'll be getting beautiful bright red tomatoes coming out of your ears, right? And there's also extras of capsicum, zucchinis, even broccoli and cabbage you can grow now. But yeah, tomatoes are my number my the one that I would grow. Now, why have I shown this picture? Well, you have to make sure you trellis your tomatoes. And for first-time growers, I strongly advise do determinate tomatoes. Indeterminate tomatoes will just grow and grow and grow until they die, until they collapse.